What if all the rich, diverse journeys of our souls are how God explores the universe as us? And what if we awaken to that? What then? Come join us as we open the door to all the adventures of being human in these times on this beautiful planet we call home. Hi, Will. Hey,
Hey,
this is Stephen, also known as Seven.
how
Now,
are you
we
doing?
live in a,
Hi, Seven.
Good to
Good.
meet you.
Seven moved out here from New York from a commune during the COVID insanity and made kind of his escape from New York. And he's now part of our vegan truth and freedom potluck we have every week.
Perfect. Okay.
And Will, you are an incredible truth and freedom activist for animals for many years, but also now for humans as well. We've been friends around veganism since 2015. And when the whole COVID rollout happened, I called you up first to see what do you think's going on here. We have had a lot of talks about that, and I'm excited that you've put it all together with your insights into a book called Food for Freedom, and you're exploring the connection between human freedom, which we all really want and see the value of these days more than ever, and animal freedom. So please tell us more about what you're thinking these days.
Well, thank you so much, Susan. Thank you, Seven, also for joining us. This is a copy of the brand new book that you can see also in the background, Food for Freedom, Reclaiming Our Health and Rescuing Our World. And basically, to answer your question, this is a 375 page book that answers the question. And so it's difficult to do it in a nutshell, but in a nutshell, I think, the underlying essential idea is that whatever we sow, we will reap. So if we're going to sow the seeds of domination and exploitation of animals on a massive scale, which is what we are doing, we've been doing now for centuries, we reap that happening to ourselves. We find ourselves more and more in situations where we're being dominated and exploited by people in many ways who look at us like livestock. The way we look at cows and pigs and chickens, we reduce them to mere livestock commodities that we buy and sell by the pound. And so this new book, Food for Freedom, is, in my mind, a call to humanity to free ourselves from the behavior of dominating and exploiting animals, and from the underlying mentality, which is even more important, of seeing ourselves as inherently worthy of dominating and exploiting them mercilessly as we do. And so we find, like you said, that we have a movement of people. It's called the vegan movement or the animal liberation movement. People who do their best not to harm animals for food, right? We do our best not to buy meat, dairy products, or eggs, or to consume them, wool, silk, or leather, or buy products tested on animals. So we try to live a life of ahimsa, the old Sanskrit word that means nonviolence. It's really the core of all the world religions and the world spiritual teachings. And so people you would think who are vegans, that is a small percentage of the population. I'm not sure exactly, but I would say 1 or 2% probably of the United States population or world population is actually practicing veganism. It's a small percentage. To me, it's been growing. It seemed like it was really growing right up to COVID. And after COVID, I'm not sure what's happened. It's hard to tell. A lot of the vegan restaurants have gone out of business. A lot of the vegan movement became more divided. And there was Veg Fest kind of stopped happening. And a lot of momentum, I think, was lost. Although I think it's still a viable, relatively healthy movement. But the problem, I think, is that people within this movement who you would think would be the very ones who would, when COVID was rolled out, and it was this narrative that was being absolutely poured through all the media channels of fear based on medical, a fear of viruses, basically, of contagion, that we're going to make each other sick. that it was all based on this on the pharmaceutical narrative. And so I thought that vegans would be savvy enough not to just be gullibly believe that, when it's obviously to the advantage of the pharmaceutical industry, which for me as a vegan for the last vegan activist for over 40 years, I knew that the pharmaceutical industry was the number one enemy of animals in terms of they torture to death millions of animals, and they make their money on, really, they're the biggest enemy of the vegan movement is the pharmaceutical industry.
And they're probably the biggest enemy of true health also, really, wouldn't you say?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, the problem is what they don't want more than anything is healthy people, right? Healthy people like me. I haven't bought a pill or had a procedure, whatever, in decades. That would be their worst nightmare. So they don't want any kind of a cure for anything. They want to have treatments that will hopefully last to the end of the person's life. So chronic illness is really the goal, I think, of the pharmaceutical medical complex. And it's really interconnected with the food and agricultural and chemical complex. It's all one complex. And that's integrated in with the banking complex, because it's the bankers in the background that make money and have the power and control over the people through these industries. So it's really important to get a bigger view of what's really happening on planet Earth than just this sort of shallow view of sort of us versus them, to really see the bigger picture, that's been developing over the decades and centuries. And that's what I try to do in the new book, Food for Freedom, is to expand the world peace diet vision into the globalist vision that we see unfolding, and really show that now more than ever, it's essential for us to do this kind of research and inner work and outer work together.
Very important, and I think that you have a great deal to contribute to this. And again, I'm curious as to what's your analysis of your take on why so many vegans kind of put on the blinders when they do seem to be people generally that question the narrative.
I think there's probably maybe three main reasons. The first reason is that most of the people in the vegan movement consider themselves to be on the left, right? Democrats or on the left. Like I was a Democrat for 40 years or whatever, and I would never vote for a Republican. It was like but then I saw it coming. I mean, I saw it coming when Clinton got in. And it was like, well, what's going on with this whole thing? I could see it was like this conservative Democrat. It was kind of like bringing big business, offshoring all the jobs over to China, like really attacking the working class. The Democrat Party was typically a working class, supporting the little guy, and the Republicans were like supporting the big rich guys. That was kind of how it was.
We're marketing,
but that all started shifting, and the Democrat usually was the party of peace, not war. But then we had all these wars, and both Republicans and Democrats. But when Obama came in, there was like all these wars. So anyway, I started shifting away from identifying as a Democrat, because I wouldn't identify as a Republican either. But it was like it's like a uniparty. They're both. But I think what happened was the Democrat or the left was gradually hijacked into like identity politics and just caring about these relatively trivial things.
I could add something there. It seems to me like identification with anything is at the core of our problem. So if we identify with a political party, with a religion, or with veganism, it kind of restricts our thinking and our intelligence.
Right. The whole idea, I think, is to free ourselves from that kind of identification with a particular label. And even like the label vegan, it's really just about living a life as a human being that is loving. It's like, you don't have to have a label on it. But the thing is that when this COVID thing was rolled out, the point I want to make is that it was skillfully done in the sense that it really targeted the left, because the whole idea of wearing a mask was you wear the mask because you care about others. you get vaccinated because you care about others. It's all about caring about others. Anyone who doesn't wear a mask and doesn't socially distance and doesn't wash their hands 20 times a day, and doesn't get vaccinated, right, is selfish. This idea of selfishness. And so no self-respecting liberal could ever question, no, I'm not selfish. No. I'll do anything for other people. So it became that kind of a thing. And so as vegans, we're all about not doing anything. So basically, our inherent compassion and empathy was weaponized against us. Right. And people didn't realize it. They were too gullible to see that they were being played. And it's very difficult, to see those kinds of things. And then part of that also was that the AMA, the medical profession, really clamped down on doctors and nurses, on the medical profession so hard that very few doctors spoke up against this, even though it goes completely against the Hippocratic Oath and everything. Never in the history of medicine has there been a situation where people who are basically healthy, who are asymptomatic, are considered spreaders. There's never been. If you're healthy, you're not a spreader of anything. But now all of a sudden we have this idea that, well, people can be asymptomatic spreaders, so everybody has to wear a mask and everybody has to get vaccinated. That's never happened. Why aren't the doctors saying something? But they didn't, because if anyone spoke out, they would lose their license. This happened. People would lose their license. It was tyrannical against the doctors. And so doctors, and the other thing is, I have a PhD, and so I know what it's like to go through a bachelor's degree, and then you go through an advanced degree. And the more you go through this, the more you kind of sell your soul in a certain sense. You have to, when I did it, I had to be willing to do the steps. If I wanted the prize at the end, right, my degree, I had to be willing to do what they wanted me to do to get it. I had to be willing to sit in the same room with them and have them ask me questions and answer their questions in a way that they say, oh, yep, you're one of us. Yeah, you're one of us. You have to be willing. If you don't, they won't give it to you. So there's a very powerful brainwashing that goes on. And for the reward, and you get a great reward. You have your degree. You can go on and make a lot of money. You can be high in society. You can be one of the insiders. It's very just subversive. It's very tantalizing. You don't want to give that up, because and doctors worked hard and they went into debt and they did all this and they have no other skills. if they can't do that, they can work at McDonald's. And so these vegan doctors that people revered because they really had somewhat questioned the official narrative and said, well, the most important thing is to eat a healthy diet. So these people were pretty good. We know who they are, the vegan doctors, and everybody in the vegan movement kind of reveres the vegan doctors. But these same vegan doctors, virtually none of them questioned the vaccine, the mask. In fact, most of them were completely anti anyone who questioned it.
Was that to protect themselves, or was it an actual a belief from the hypnosis?
Good question. I think it was from talking to them. They really bought into it. They really believed it. They really believed. The thing is, in a medical school, there's two things they don't teach the doctors about. They don't teach them about nutrition, and they don't teach them about vaccination. They have we have one class about nutrition. I say, okay, so you need to get some protein, some carbohydrates, and you got to get some that. Okay, let's forget that. Now let's get on to the drugs. We got to, and it's the same thing about vaccines. They have one class. They say, okay, well, there's this vaccine schedule, and these are safe and effective, and you just got to give this one then, this one then, this one then, and that's that. Okay, now let's go on to the next thing. Let's get on to the drugs. So they don't teach them anything. And they don't know anything, but everybody thinks the doctors know all about nutrition. Oh, the doctor said I should eat this. The doctor said I should eat that. The doctor said I should take this vaccine. They don't know any more than anybody.
I was fortunate when this whole thing started because my husband has a PhD in immunology and microbiology. And he immediately said, this isn't right. Like, as you were saying, this is not what they do in epidemics. And this doesn't even seem like an epidemic if you look at the stats.
Right.
And so that gave us a little leg up to see that. But it was kind of shocking I watched this video from 2020 recently where the vegan doctors are all saying, "Oh yes, this is it. This is bad. It's terrible. You got to do the mask and do the shots. You got to. I mean, how could you question it?"
Right. Well, so that was the problem. So those are two of the reasons that I think the vegan movement which should have been on the forefront of freedom, right? Because veganism is about sovereignty of individual beings, sovereignty of individual animals, and for us to be able to spread the message, to speak the truth, to not be censored. But here are all the vegans like censoring, saying, no, don't talk about this. I mean, I get censored massively by vegans. I was not allowed to speak out online or at VegFest or any of these places because I was seen as a dangerous misinformation spreader, because I was questioning the pharmaceutical industry. I mean, this is so ironic. I mean, remember one of these, one of the big VegFests, they literally said to me, we're not going to give you a platform because you're speaking against the vaccine, and the vaccine is important for us to be healthy. And I'm thinking, a vaccine is always tested on animals. It virtually always has some kind of animal products in it. That's like saying, well, we're not going to give you a platform because you're speaking against dairy, and we need to have dairy to be healthy. We need to have it for calcium, so we're not going to let you speak. That's kind of like what they were saying. I mean, they're not going to allow a speaker who's opposed to animal-based products because they're opposed to animal-based products. I mean, it's the vegan movement really lost its way. The whole vegan society in London got behind the vaccines. Everybody just followed, like the Pied Piper, just kind of like put their blinders on and just said, well, follow the science. I was called a science denier. And I am a science denier because that's not science. I mean, that's propaganda. Luckily, I got a PhD, which is a little bit different than an MD. PhD, you actually have to do original research. So I was able to take courses that doctors never took, like courses in quantitative research methodology and qualitative research methodology. So I learned the subtleties of who pays for research and how you can manipulate data. I learned all that. So I knew that you cannot believe what's in these journals, but doctors are taught to believe what's in the journals. So doctors are very unsophisticated when it comes to studies and data. They don't know. They just believe it. They believe anything. They believe whatever the lab says because they're taught if you send it out to the lab, that's what it says. So like the PCR test, which is a complete farce. You can't use that the guy that invented, as you know, Kerry Mullis, said you can never use this as a diagnostic tool, but they were using that. And I remember talking to some of these vegan doctors and I said, well, the PCR test doesn't test actually for COVID. You can't test for, and they said, well, no, I mean, you send it out to the lab, they test it and it comes back. That's what it is.
That's what the test is.
You couldn't even think of questioning that, So, I mean, so that's the problem. So the fact that it was the liberals were targeted, the doctors went along with it. And then I think the other big thing was that vegans in general are stressed because we're a small minority. And so we're in the small minority and there's all these other people that think we're kind of loony, that we're vegans. And so when COVID came along, it was kind of like this psychological release. It's like, well, now I can be part of the whole group. I can be part of everybody. We're all together. We're all fighting this disease. We're all in it. I'm not this lone, strange person anymore. I'm part of the big group. And they could feel that I think a lot of people felt psychological relief that they're part of the group. They believe Fauci. They believe everything. Three things. The whole movement just collapsed in a lot of ways, really.
Here's Evan's view on that because he was right in the heart of New York City where it's rolled out.
I was just saying that's the nature of being a human being is to connect with others. And
right.
If you feel excluded, that's not just a threat, but it's a kind of illness in your situation. And so you want to be connected. So this was an opportunity for people to connect with others. With the propaganda was so expertly put out.
Right.
It just brilliantly put out, and people just said, "Oh, now's my chance." I didn't think about it because everybody knows it's true, and they
Yeah.
just and they found they could enter into the fold.
Mhm.
Right. That's true. It was really well done. I mean, people who analyze this, I think they call it fifth generation military or warfare or psychological warfare done by the military. And we know now that the whole operation was actually coordinated by the Pentagon and by the CIA.
Right.
So it was a military operation, and they've been doing this for decades. They know how to control societies, how to overthrow regimes, how to find fracture points within a population where people will start fighting with each other, and it's a divide and conquer strategy. And so all of those things were like you say, brilliantly and expertly done. They have a lot of practice in that. They completely controlled the media, and they took control of social media too. Yeah. And so it really took a lot. It was really interesting. It took a lot of, I think, of individual psychological and spiritual strength for people to stay aligned with their own inner wisdom and not just be swept along. And that's where we could really see, I think, who had been doing their inner work and who really hadn't been. I mean, quite honestly, because it is a lot to do with whether I'm going to believe outside authorities or whether I'm going to connect with the inner wisdom that is much more trustworthy.
I kind of guess if you did a sociological retrospective research thing on this, that people who were spiritually oriented, who were living under the guidance of a guru or a leader or a teacher, probably went along with it more than those who were kind of more independent practitioners, if you will, all along.
I know.
That's my theory.
It's an interesting thing because so many of the groups I thought would really resist didn't. Not only the vegans, but also like a lot of even like I speak a lot at unity churches, Unitarian, these sort of really progressive, and even based on spiritual healing, you would think they would be, no. There's one power in the universe, God the good. I'm going to trust that. I'm not going to trust this pharmaceutical poison industry. They all went along with it, and then the mindfulness communities, the Buddhist communities,
homeopaths,
they all kind of went along with it, and it was really only people like the Mennonites and the conservative Christians, really. The conservative Christians. They were not all of them though. A lot of the conservative Christians went right along with it too. I mean, it was amazing. But the Orthodox Christians were good. I mean, the Orthodox, like the Russian Orthodox, Greek Orthodox, most of them were questioning it. And I think people who were taking responsibility for their own health, like I found within the vegan community, it was really the raw foodists, the raw vegans. Most of them, they didn't go along with it. They knew because they were already really proactive in taking care of their own health and they were vegan for health reasons. And I think that was on their side. They were like, they didn't trust Big Pharma at all. And a lot of people who are vegan for animal reasons, they kind of trust Big Pharma. And the other thing is the animal sanctuaries. A lot of people worship not only the doctors, but they worship the sanctuaries. And the sanctuaries have all these animals, and the animals are always getting sick. So they're always getting them vaccinated and getting them the veterinarian there and all this. So they just have this deep trust of the medical system again. And I think that also played into it. So, it's really, it's complicated, but it has a lot to do, I think, with, people who were less educated. They were the most aware and unwilling to go along with the narrative. I mean, people who had less education. So I think it showed the education level in general worked against people in terms of their freedom. The more educated they were, the more they just trusted authorities.
Yeah, there's some interesting data. It was like people with master's degrees and PhDs and so forth tended to go along with it more than people with high school education. Right.
Yeah, so I think that shows that the educational system is based really primarily. Its number one goal is to train people to obey authority. I mean, that's the goal. It's not the stated goal, but it's the actual goal. And the longer people marinate in that educational system, the more they get rewarded for, they become the authorities themselves, and they're rewarded if they obey those above them. It's a very hierarchical system. So it's all based on hierarchy. And the higher you are, the more you're in it, and you don't question it because you get rewarded. The people that are low in it, they question it because they don't get much out of it.
So what do you think is the way out of this for us as a society? And also to bring back some kind of cohesion between these different movements, that have divided themselves. They're almost on the verge of civil war at times. I mean, how do we bring back wholeness? And are we at some level, I'm going to bring this out too, are we at some level, all, like Shakespeare said, actors on a stage that are somehow expressing some aspect of divine mind that wants to wake up and to bring ourselves into a new world that maybe, the vegan movement as it wasn't quite working. Maybe we needed some kind of wake-up call to do that, and maybe all of this was part of that. Do you think that's possible?
Oh, it is. I think for sure it is. There's it's a great perspective you're bringing, because I think each one of us, like you say, has a piece of the puzzle of this large sort of multidimensional reality. We're all a product of our culture, but we all contribute to our culture. We all are actually we're co-creating our world together. And so we each have a part to play. Like right now we're having this conversation that will touch other people, and they'll touch other people. And, we're just all rippling continually. We're continually sending ripples out into the web of infinite relations with every thought, word, and deed that we're expressing, and we're impacting each other all the time. And so for me, it's like writing this book and then giving talks, and, and Madeline doing paintings, and, all these different things. But I think the way forward, really, from my point of view, is to go back to the ancient wisdom teachings, the traditions that really are at the core of all the world religions. The two main teachings being the golden rule, like just understanding, not doing to others what we would not have done to ourselves, and that basic idea of our inherent wisdom and empathy to not harm others, and include all living beings in that, not just human beings that we like, the same race, the same whatever, but all human beings, but not just stop there, all living beings who are capable of suffering. Really, this is the call to include all beings. We haven't been doing that.
We all are having this tendency to other people. Like that's the other side of it. That's the Trumpers, or that's the, that's the Biden, whatever. It's like there's a real divide going on here. And I noticed myself that just before the pandemic thing started, at Christmas, I was at a party and some people were making fun of Trump. And I was kind of playing in with that because I kind of had the genetics for it. So anyway, and then all of a sudden I realized, wait a minute, it's another soul out there. It's just another human being. And once I kind of got that, internalized it, that enabled me to see everything that happened after that in a whole different light.
Right. No, that's the key. That there's a strong program in our society of materialism. I talk about this in the Food for Freedom book. And materialism makes us identify with the body and with this collection that we've accumulated around ourselves of our attitudes, our beliefs, and so forth. This object. And then we see others as their body and their beliefs, and we turn everything into an object. And the whole spirituality is the opposite of that. Spirituality is seeing the essential life that is shining through these apparent outer forms, and realizing that it's one life living through all of us. It's one light shining through all of us. And when we begin to really experience that, though, we have to experience that ourselves, I think, in meditation or somehow in nature. We need to quiet our minds. That's really the key, because the average person in our society has been programmed from birth to identify with this body and with its collection as a fundamentally separate self, to see others as separate selves, and have a continuing, ongoing monologue that never stops, enforces that whole thing. So for me, I'm just enormously grateful that when I was 22 years old, I left home with my brother, and with no money, we were going to walk. We walked all the way to we were going to walk all the way to California, like Indian sadhus, with just meditating and letting the universe take care of us. But we ended up walking south.
Healed your
and we ended up in eventually in a meditation center. We went to the farm. That's where we saw all these vegetarians, these vegans. We became a vegetarian, and then a few years later a vegan because of them, really. But we ended up at a Zen center just meditating, like, get up in the morning and start sitting at 6 a.m. and go all the way till like 9 p.m. I mean, all I did was just sit. I had nothing else to do. It was like, all right, I just got to do that, So I am so grateful that myself as a young man, I had this burning desire to attain enlightenment and just don't do anything else. That's it. Nothing else. It's all a distraction. Anything. Don't make money. Don't care about women. Don't care about anything. Just get enlightened, and find out who I am. So I spent most of my whole 20s just doing all this and ended up being a Zen monk in Korea and just, sitting, thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of just sitting. But the point is that I think just planted a seed and helped me to realize that what I am is not this collection. What I am is the light that makes this possible, and it's eternal. So I've been marinating for 50 years in the basic idea of multiple lifetimes. First of all, like when someone says, most people in our society think this is the only lifetime we have. This is it, and then it's over, nothing after that or whatever. To me, it's like, I'm on a path that's probably going to take me maybe another 80 lifetimes to get enlightened, or I don't know how many, in all different races and genders and who knows what. So it's a big picture. I mean, what's happening in the world right now is, we all think it's a big thing. It's a big thing on one level, but it's a much bigger movie going on, way bigger. And there's many other dimensions of existence and many other possibilities of manifesting consciousness. So it's a school. We're here to learn. What matters is how we respond to the situation, right? It's like a gymnasium. If you walk into a gymnasium, there's all these weights, you got to lift. And you wouldn't want to go to a gymnasium where the heaviest weight was only 2 pounds, right? It's like, it's no good. So you come to the Earth School, it's like heavy weights, it's like big challenges, really strong delusion everywhere. How do you respond? Do you go along with it? Do you divide and attack other people, or do you realize, look, this is, how do I respond to this? How do I respond to all the fear and the tyranny that's being inflicted, and how do I treat animals? How do I treat people who have less money and so forth? It's really a test, and it's for our own learning. So I think that's the underlying idea, is just to see we're in a spiritual school, and all this is for our own growth.
Right, that's great. You wanted to say something, Sam.
I was just thinking about how there's a philosophy that I happen to share, that there's an underlying unity that we're all part of, there's a unity, and then we are kind of playing this role of being a separate individuation within the unity. And this idea of the golden rule, and if I dominate something, then that is saying, you have permission to dominate me.
Yeah.
Right.
With the golden rule. But I was thinking that sometimes, like, I don't know if domination, what word is right when somebody says, oh, I want this thing done, I want you to do it, and I'd say, oh, okay, I'll do that, and I'm doing it for them. Am I being dominated? I guess it's only domination if it's not my choice. But I'm thinking, like, so if we're all sharing the same consciousness, then that includes trees, for example. So I'm dominating the tree to create a chair that is going to live for generations through my family and my home, say. So did I dominate the tree? Did the tree agree in a higher frequency to be that chair? And the tree wants to be that chair, and it needed me to dominate it. I don't think the word dominate is right. I'm just wondering how to look at some of these things. So, and that would extend, I'm coming to veganism with that. So does the lettuce want to be eaten because it wants to be wants to play that role as part of this whole machine of consciousness of God? And where does that stop? Does the chicken want to give eggs to the humans to, because they're playing this important, valuable role?
I can't believe that.
And so that's just another way to look at it. What do you think of that?
Well, I think we have to be very careful, when if I'm the one who's using another being, then it's easy to say, well, the cow gives me the milk, the bees give me their honey, the chicken gives me the eggs, that's what they're here for. And God made them to give me what I want. Oh, and God gave me those kind of people to work for me. And they gave me women to give me kids. And they gave me this and that. It's a cultural narrative that we're born into that's enormously powerful. And to even put thoughts into words, where as soon as you have a language, you've got a whole meaning system that we're just, again, marinated in. So if we were born in a culture where you would never touch a tree without going into a deep meditation and getting permission for anything, right, then we would have a different relationship perhaps with trees than we have now. And I think we've been raised in a society where we look at the earth as basically dead. It's just biologically it's alive, but it's not sacred really. So I think if we as human beings mature spiritually and understand what you're saying, that there's one life, really like a unity that lives through all of us, then what always happens is we develop a tremendous respect for every little thing, and we try not to waste anything or use or abuse anything. Like in Zen, you just never throw away any garment. You just keep patching it up and use and keep. We have all the monks are in these patchwork robes, because you don't want to just buy and make something else, or cut down another tree. You try to recycle everything. The whole idea of minimalism, properly understood, is very much in alignment with spiritual awakening. The idea is that we don't waste we don't try not to waste any water, try not to waste land, certainly not waste life. And so a vegan way of living, which minimizes the amount of suffering we cause to others, is right in alignment with that. And I think, like, we have a garden here now that we have some land, and we grow a lot of our own food. So we're out there with these plants all the time, and the whole idea is to love them. We give them love. And for the most part, the kind of things we're growing, the more we love them, the more they love us back, and we're not harming them. We have 76 trees that give us fruits and nuts, right? And so the more we love them, the more there's all these apples and nectarines and cherries and persimmons and figs, and it's just like pouring so many, and it's just blessing them. And then we have tomatoes and cucumbers and peppers and squashes and all those, and they're just giving. It's amazing. And we do have some kale trees and kale, and so we're taking the leaves off, but they keep giving new leaves, and we keep taking them, and so it feels like we're always watering them with compost tea and putting minerals in, and we're building the soil, we're building the mushroom, the microsomial, whatever it's called, the web of life in the soil and all that stuff. So I think the whole idea is to just understand that we are not separate from nature, that we are nature, and to manifest our life as best we can in a loving way and minimize the amount of violence that we're causing.
What's the difference between a tree giving fruits with their seeds? I mean, that's their seeds, but they're giving the fruits, and the chicken that's giving its eggs.
Oh, it's a total different thing. I mean, you can't even begin to compare it, because chickens live for millions of years in the jungles of Southeast Asia, right? So that's their life. They live in communities, and they're up in the trees at night, and they're part of the jungle. So we come along, and with total violence, we take them out of there and we put them in a cage. We imprison them. We kill all the males, a bunch of females living together, and we steal their sovereignty, we steal their purpose, we steal everything from them, and we steal their eggs. I mean, it's pure violence. It's just nothing but violence. Plant a tree giving, we eat the fruits, we spread the seeds. I mean, we're fulfilling the tree's happy, we're happy. The tree makes the fruits colorful, so we'll be attracted to them. It's completely opposite. It's a total opposite thing. One is an act of love and kindness. The other is an act of violence and abuse. It's completely unnecessary, and the products are unhealthy. I mean, the whole thing is totally different.
Yeah, I mean, I can see like making an orchard of apples. So there's like all row upon row of apple trees. That's unnatural. And it's like I've imprisoned these trees in this unnatural way for my benefit. That I could see looking at it like that.
A person could also make an argument, but wait, I raise my chickens in the backyard. I love them. They're like pets. They give us eggs, and whereas those guys over there are doing this factory farm equivalent of growing plants in a certain way. So, but the truth is, if you really look into it deeper with the animals, that you have to look at where did they get those chickens from. And they usually get the pullets from places that are just totally abusive places that are grinding up the little baby male chicks and doing all kinds of nasty stuff. And it's not as simple as you think. And besides which, they only lay eggs for a few years, and then then what are you going to do? You're going to just, if you keep it as a pet forever and treat it well, maybe that's okay. But to me, I'm married to a veterinarian. And we've asked a lot of these questions about animals, and honestly, we don't have a pet. We had one cat, but we just don't do it because we don't want to have that relationship with another being of owning it.
Well, yeah, you can't own another being anyway. So if one has a companion animal, you can say I'm a caretaker of this animal. You never own. I mean, that's ridiculous. But I think you're right. It's just the eggs from a chicken are always the product of taking her out of her natural environment. I mean, if you want to. I mean, a chicken's like any other bird. Normally they would only give a couple of eggs a year. That's it, like a robin or whatever. And they've been bred, for thousands of years to give all these eggs. So it's already violence, using them genetically, abusing them. And if you want to go into the jungle of Southeast Asia and climb around and try to find an egg or whatever, I mean, steal it from her that way. But, the fact that we can't see that shows that we are slaves. That shows exactly that we are slaves. I'm giving her a good life. So white people said that about black people. Look, we took them. They were living in Africa. We brought them here. We educate them. We feed them. They do a little work for us. I mean, God, what are you talking about? I mean, we love them. We love them. I mean, give me a break. I mean, you can't enslave a being and say it's love. That's only a slave would say that. Only a slave could even think that way. You're right about the trees, the orchard. The thing is, it's like we have a society that's based on animal agriculture, on dominating nature. So we do plant agriculture the same way we do animal agriculture. We use pesticide, herbicide, fungicide. We do monocropping, have all one thing. We could do it with communities of plants and gardens. We can create things that are beautiful without. I think I really feel that's the next the next
step.
Goal, really, or the new horizon, I guess, for humanity is when we really stop violating animals, and then we can start to have a relationship with them that's based on equality or a sense of respect for each other, not either wiping you out as a pest or owning you as a, but just really to learn from animals. We can learn a lot from them, I think, and they can maybe learn from us. I mean, we can attune to them, but I think also the same thing is true with plants. I think plants have a consciousness. And we can learn from them, and we can share, and we can see how they want to be. And I think basically we live in a benevolent universe, and they create incredibly healthy, delicious foods that are medicinal and give us energy. And we spread their seeds, we help them. I mean, the whole thing is so beautiful. There's no reason for us to be killing animals or to be regimenting all these plants. It's all about money. We want to get a lot of money out of a piece of land, so we make an orchard in a certain way. But I think if we could get into more local, decentralized way of living, that's the key, where everybody is growing our own food in our own way in communities and together, then we would be much more in harmony with nature. So the whole idea is centralization of power and control and money and wealth and information. That's the goal of the globalists, and we have a few people that control everybody. And the way forward to answer your question is decentralization, that each one of us starts to grow our own food, find our own means of information, our own means of exchange, that all these different things, to start bartering more. Everything we can do to decentralize the system is healthy, and to minimize the impact we have on the earth.
Well, I have a question for you, and for Seven too, myself. It seems to me that the ultimate spiritual truth, again, what we've talked about, what we studied and experienced and all that, is an essential oneness between us. And so even when we talk about the cabal or the globalists or the elites, they surely are an expression at some level of the same divine mind that, as I say, is behind all of creation, or whatever that is, which individuates as, distinct beings. And so it seems to me that as some of us will begin to awaken, some of these fractals of God, if you will, that this is going to have some way in which it wakens up even those parts of the mind that are kind of seeking more power and domination and control, that it just seems like it's going to create a force, because there's a unity of consciousness behind it all, that we're like leaky buckets. Our thoughts are going through, the multiverse all the time. But this is going to wake up even those people in that way. Do you think that's feasible?
Well, I think,
but
yeah, I just think a lot of this is, we can only talk in metaphors in a way, maybe. Like the people that we look at, like as the evil, the bankers in the background that are pulling the strings, that are causing so many wars and people to die and be tortured and killed and all these terrible things. That in a way is part of the school, right? It's part of the situation where we need to respond to. And I think, there's this beautiful metaphor of people on a stage, like you mentioned on a stage. You have this people in a production, and you have the hero, you have the anti-hero, you have the villain, you have the innocent victims, all this going on the stage, and they're all playing it out, and they're suffering, and there's blood everywhere, and who knows what, But then after it's over, and the audience goes home, and everybody goes back, and they have a party, and oh, you really played that act really well, you did great on that, and oh yeah, I liked how you really hit that guy, and whatever. It's like it's all, in a way, it is a stage in a way, and the thing is, like I said about the gym and the heavy weights, like the evil people, the so-called, they're the heavy weights. Like you got, all right, now what are you going to do? They're coming to take you. They're coming to take your freedom, and it's really, they really are actually. And so we need to figure out how we can bond together, how we can see the bigger picture, how we can stop dominating animals. That's the big thing. It's like, if we're going to insist on dominating animals and killing and exploiting them by the millions, what right do we have to think, well, I don't want to be dominated? And that's the whole point. We have this gigantic movement of freedom. All these people who have all their TV shows or their Substacks and all this, and they're all talking about how we have to have freedom, we have to have medical freedom, we have to have freedom of speech, we have to have freedom of assembly, we have to have freedom of religion. But I want to have my steak, I want to have my cheese, I want to have my burger. That is why I wrote this book too, is to try to help people see that our freedom demands that we take responsibility for how we treat others and don't steal their freedom. And these other beings, which are not only the animals, but also wildlife and also hungry people. And there's a whole web of workers that have to stab animals. A lot of people are harmed, as well as animals and future generations and ecosystems, by animal agriculture. And so we're called more than ever to question the official narrative of violence towards animals if we want to have freedom for ourselves. And I think hopefully that's the great gift that will come out of all this, is that we will finally get the propulsion to liberate animals, because otherwise our future, unfortunately, it's serious. I don't want to be too negative, but just think about it. 10,000 years ago, a few people started to own wild sheep. For the very first time on planet Earth, people started to own animals as property, started dominating them and turning them into livestock. A few people in Iraq, and then Syria and places, and then wild goats, and then wild cows and other animals. 10,000 years later, what has it been like to be a cow on this earth? You're born into horrible slavery and misery and violence for 10,000 years. I don't want that to happen to humans for 10,000 years. I mean, it potentially could happen. I mean, you have a technology that's powerful enough to completely lock down everybody. You have people who are willing to go along with whatever they're told to do. And you have children, we have a declining birth rate. We have educational system and controlled political, economic, banking, and media systems, and we have surveillance systems. I mean, it's in place. It's actually in place. A factory farm situation for humans is on the horizon, and if it got to the point, we have these great stories like Viktor Frankl, how he was able to be in the Holocaust, and he could man's meaning, and he could write all this stuff, and we think, oh, how romantic, he knows his meaning. But if you have a real situation of factory farming humans, where from when the time you're born and you're just used as an object, you're never going to get that far is to think about meaning. You're just going to be like a cow, just suffering your whole life, and that is something that is so beyond what we can even imagine in terms of horror. And I don't think I don't think it's going to happen, but I'm just saying we've done that. We've been doing that. We have been doing it. We're still doing it. And these animals' suffering is real for them when they're going through it. So I think we have to understand that the stakes are pretty high, in the sense that there's a lot of suffering that when people are put into these situations, you can't get out. It's intense. So it's really critical for us to share these ideas so that we can liberate animals and create a foundation of freedom for us, for our children, and for future generations in the face of this technocracy that is controlled by only a few people. And we don't know who they are. They could be interdimensional beings who just get energy from misery. They just feed on fear. They feed on pain and suffering, right? Like we feed on cows and pigs. We say, yum, yum, yum. I love bacon. Yum, 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 yum. We feed on their misery and pain, and we cause it, and we force them into horrible pain their entire lives, and then we kill them. Well, maybe they feel the same entitlement. Oh yeah, they're just humans. We'll do that to them. So it's really important for us now more than ever to wake up out of this cultural trance of eating animal foods.
Talking about this aspect of co-opting the good liberal heart, and also that angle you're talking about with vegans feeling excluded, or people want to belong, and so when you can belong by wearing a mask, by going along with the jab and all that stuff,
right?
And beneath that is really the need to drop identification, with any particular form, be it your religion, your veganism, or your profession, or anything else. That seems to me really fundamental to all of this.
Yeah, but that's a spiritual practice. I mean, that's not easy.
There's an awakening here that I think needs to happen at that level. And again, though, I'm going to say again that part. I think that because we are one mind, when you wake up in the morning, it's not like one eye opens and then the other one stays shut. And you go around and have breakfast or something. It's kind of like the whole being wakes up. It might take 5 or 10 minutes. Maybe a cup of coffee or something. But you wake up as one unity. One unified being. So if we are one unified being, it seems like we're going to all wake up together.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Isn't it? An angle you might kind of let that one soup in your brilliant mind and kind of think about.
Well, it's what they say the Buddha said when he attained enlightenment was, "I and all beings of the past, present, and future have been, are, and always will be completely enlightened." So, it wasn't like I got enlightened. It was like all beings are, always have been, and enlightened. So that it was like it's done. It's already done. It's
so that includes you and me and everybody here, right?
Yeah,
we're all enlightened.
Right. We're already enlightened. We just have to realize.
How does that work?
And if we're playing a game at some level, I mean, it's a serious game. Yes, it seems like there's real suffering that for us as well as the animals. Some say that we are mostly still in spirit, and that we're pretty advanced beings to create this three-dimensional reality and keep it going. And that really there's no time and no space. It's all one point.
Right.
And that it's really an illusion, and that to hold it in place takes a real focus. That's a new concept to me that's come along in the last year. So I've been hearing a number of people saying it.
And our awareness is what's moving around this existence, something that exists fully. But my awareness is only aware of the part that I'm in, that I am.
Right.
Something.
No,
But I'm moving
unless,
through, yeah, I haven't wrapped my head around it all.
right. Unless we open up
And-
and do something like, silver mind control or training and telepathy, you can begin to experience other people's thoughts to some extent. And,
Mhm.
I think, Stephen, you changed your name to Seven. And I don't know if it just reminded me of a book I read a long time ago by Jane Roberts. Have you
I
ever
read that
read
book. Yeah, I just read that.
Further Education, The Education of Oversoul Seven?
Yeah, it was very cool.
Did that influence your name change there? Or?
No, it didn't. Yeah, it happened after I started going by Seven, and then I found that book on my bookshelf. I'd been carrying it around for decades, but I had never actually read it.
Yeah.
Okay, now's the time, and I read it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was moving around different lifetimes, different personas, different experiences,
Right. Seven. Yeah.
everything,
Oh,
and different attitudes and different ways of being. That
huh.
was fantastic.
Check it out. Yeah. It seems like, in our potluck group, there's a variety of people, ranging from people who were Christian fundamentalists to people who've been on the spiritual path their whole life and done Buddhism and Sufism and all kinds of stuff. There's just such a rich variety of people. I have been finding it in the last year, just listening to people's stories has opened my
Yeah.
heart, and I just don't feel so attached to being Susan or to thinking that they're so and so and so and so. I mean, and I think that maybe it's hard to know. Like if you were stoned, you think everybody's stoned, right? It's like you've ever used marijuana in the past, right? But maybe it's a distortion of consciousness to think this way. But I really respect your understanding, wisdom, Will, and just wondering, if you would chew this one over a little bit and sort of see if you think there is a possibility that the more that we truly open our minds to unity consciousness and believe that it's possible, that it's real, it's not just an ideal, or experience it as real, the more it's going to have an influence on the whole noosphere.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure that's true. It's just, and that's one of the reasons we keep giving these talks and writing books. And it really comes from that place of knowing that there's one life living through all of us. As each one of us manifests that more clearly, it makes it easier for everyone else to do the same thing.
Yeah, I think the Enlightenment angle that you bring into veganism is, I don't know of anyone else that's doing it. There might be some. You?
I don't think it's weird. People don't. I don't know.
Seems like self-evident to me.
Yeah.
But have you heard there's this idea that to change something, you have to accept it and love it.
Yeah.
And allow it. And then it changes. Then it can change.
Mm-hmm.
It's like until you accept it and allow it and are willing for it, it has to fight to be there.
Right.
Or something like that. That's how I interpreted it.
Loving our so-called Jews, even the cabal, maybe, and just like finding it in our heart to forgive all these things that happen, finding it in our hearts to forgive the whole ourselves for, when we've contributed to violence, and forgive our families and friends who do that, and forgive the big players,
Right.
the ways that pull the strings and do all this stuff. It seems like that's the position that divine consciousness would take.
Interesting. Yeah.
And Will, you've been such a leader at the forefront of all of this. And I really deeply appreciate everything that you've done in that direction and continue to do it. And we can't, of course, just leave it up to people like you to do it. We all must do our part. And it's not an easy task. I've done some lecturing and speaking a little bit on vegan issues, writing, and people don't change that readily. It's not that easy. There's a reason it's only 1 or 2% or whatever it is. And it can seem daunting. But I just want to say that the example that you set of continuing to believe that a better world is possible, to care about the animals with your entire heart and soul, as you do, and human beings, and to put all of that together with a brilliant mind, is such a contribution to the world. And I really want to thank you for doing that. And I know it's been a challenge. It's been your path. You've chosen it. And I just really want to thank you for coming on to this conversation and sharing. I encourage people who are watching to share this also, including with people who are kind of on the other side, the more conservative group, the patriots, etc., who maybe say, "Oh, look at those soy boys over there. Let's eat our meat." It's like, but for freedom, we'll defend it, you know, and it's like, we're all in this together. Actually, we really are. And and there's lessons to be learned from each other. And I think that you have the wisdom and the skill to and we all do, to open up the conversation and to share what we have learned with each other. And I really do think we're going to succeed with this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we get plenty of time.
Well, maybe not.
Time. Yeah, I think it's important to just every day do the best we can. And that's it. That's all we can do. Do the best we can every day. Yeah.
Those are Buddha's last words, do your best.
Right.
With that note, we thank you all for watching, and we encourage you to do your best to share this, to live this, and to help create a more beautiful world, and a world we all want to live in.
Thank you for your time. That was really fun.
Yeah, it's been great.
Yeah, thank you so much. Good to see you.
Great. So good to see you. Give our love to Richard.
Yeah.
Great to meet you, Seven.
Great
Thanks
to meet
again.
you.
Okay.
No.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Yeah. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching. And if you like this kind of content, these deep conversations, open door, open mind, open heart looks at people's lives and what's going on in the world today from a spiritual point of view, then please hit the like button, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Thank you.